All right, welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving straight into a totally incredible piece of lyrical storytelling. We're looking at the song "O Lord," and specifically how it masterfully blends this dark, gritty hip-hop with the deep, warm tones of gospel music. We'll be unpacking the intense, profound contrasts between a man's deeply hidden internal trauma and the external life he presents to the world. Let's get right into it.
Okay, the story kicks off with these incredibly evocative lyrics. Every bruise has its own language. Every scar remembers why. Right out of the gate, these two lines set the stage. They tell us immediately that our protagonist has a hidden history. We're instantly made aware of the immense physical and emotional toll this guy is carrying. It's a history written literally on his body, you know? A deeply personal language of pain that only he fully understands. And that brings us to the core, truly devastating question of this whole narrative. What actually happens when a strong man fights a silent war entirely alone? We're looking at a guy who projects absolute strength, someone who totally holds it together on the outside, but inside, he's fighting a literal war. Think about it. What happens to the human psyche when it's just completely, utterly isolated in that kind of struggle? Well, let's find out.
That brings us to part one of our explainer, Sunday Light and Hidden Stains. Let's look at how the illusion of a peaceful domestic life masks a much more violent reality.
The lyrics hit us right away with this jarring, highly detailed visual. Imagine this, washing blood out of a white-collar shirt, the cold water turning slowly pink. It's such a specific image. That white-collar shirt implies an ordinary, respectable, everyday kind of life, right? But it's literally tainted by blood. Watching that cold water slowly turn pink introduces us to his hidden, incredibly gritty reality. And it's happening right in the middle of a totally mundane household chore.
Now, literally just steps away from that bloody sink, we get a starkly contrasting scene. There's a little boy holding a paper crown, a daughter dancing barefoot on the floor, and a wife with a tired but genuine smile. It's a massive juxtaposition. You've got the bloody water on one hand, and these incredibly innocent, pure, fragile family moments on the other. The lyrics basically tell us that, just for one small moment, the world almost feels kind to him again.
So we see this immediate, massive clash between two different realities. In the light, you have the temporary warmth of his home, the sanctuary of his family. But waiting right there in the background is this suffocating silence. The text describes it like something breathing in the dark. It's personified. It's like a predator just sitting there, waiting for that fragile illusion of peace to shatter. All right, let's peel back another layer. Part 2, the silent war inside. Now we're shifting away from his physical environment to focus entirely on the psychological battle.
You know when you tell yourself a lie so often you almost believe it? This line marks the fracturing of his primary motivation. We see a man whose rationalizations are just crumbling under the massive weight of his secret life. He's justified whatever dark, violent reality he's part of by telling himself, hey, I'm providing for my family, I'm protecting them, but the crushing isolation is finally stripping away that comforting lie. Now, what's absolutely brilliant here is how the very structure of the music mirrors this internal split. The track isn't just one single genre. You've got this dark, emotional hip-hop with really raw male vocals that perfectly represent his isolated inner struggle, his actual truth. But contrasting that, you have a warm, spiritual gospel choir singing, "Hold on, the river gonna carry you home." It offers this distant community response, a community he feels totally cut off from.
Hands like thunder, heart like glass. I mean, wow. It's such a concise, devastating paradox. On the outside, this guy is capable of immense destruction, force, and power. Absolute thunder. But internally, emotionally, he is hopelessly fragile. He's trying to hold together a life that simply cannot survive under these intense conditions.
Moving into part 3, the disconnect of faith. Let's explore his tragic disconnection from the very community that's supposed to offer him salvation.
The lyrics paint this absolute picture-perfect Sunday environment. Imagine it. Golden sunlight, perfect voices floating through the air, women dressed in bright Sunday colors. You've got a pastor up there speaking about hope and having the patience to weather life's storms. It's this warm, deeply communal light. And physically, he is sitting right smack in the middle of it. Yet, despite all that warmth, his isolation is incredibly profound. While the rest of the congregation is actively engaging, watching hands rise toward heaven, he just keeps his own hands down in his lap. The pastor's words of hope are described as falling weightless around him, literally like rain that never even reaches his face. He is completely numb to the grace surrounding him.
And this gives us one of the most devastating architectural metaphors for spiritual loss. Faith became another room he no longer knows how to enter. Notice that he hasn't necessarily turned against his faith in anger. He's just lost the key. He's standing out in the hallway listening to the hallelujahs, but they just sound so distant, like they're echoes from somebody else's life entirely.
Which really forces us to stop and confront the massive crisis of his spiritual isolation. It begs the central question of the song's chorus. Can you hear him when he doesn't pray? Can you love a man who stopped believing anyway? Does grace actually extend to those who literally cannot bring themselves to ask for it?
Now we hit the darkest part of our explainer. Part 4, the volcano of helplessness. We're going to dissect the true nature of the rage crawling beneath his skin when he is finally alone.
The lyrics shift here to a highly visceral, physical description. The volcano wakes. This guy has fists like iron, but a soul worn incredibly thin. The pressure cooker of his dual life has to release somewhere, right? And when the silence of the dark takes over, this terrifying volcanic energy just bubbles straight to the surface.
But, and this is a huge but, here is where our empathy for him really builds. Where does that rage go? It's not directed at his children. It's not toward his wife. He isn't fundamentally a monster turning his violence on his own home. No, his rage is directed only toward the incredibly heavy life he cannot lift. He's a victim of his own circumstances, literally being crushed by gravity.
Because what destroys him most isn't hatred. It's not violence. It is helplessness. This incredibly strong man with hands like thunder is standing dangerously close to becoming something he won't even understand, driven entirely by this absolute inability to change the path he's on.
Which brings us to our final section, Part 5, Love When Faith Fades. We're looking for the resolution here, exploring what actually remains when both his belief and his physical strength are completely exhausted.
We get this haunting, heavy image. He walks home carrying darkness like a second soul inside. Just imagine the weight of that, a man physically weighed down by his sins and secrets. And the tragic irony here? While he's carrying this second soul of darkness, that gospel choir is still singing in the bright, warm light behind him.
But amidst all that heavy darkness, there's a lingering power in secular human love. Even though he is totally lost to the church and lost to his own inner demons, his wife is still there. She still reaches for his hand. She serves as this desperate, very human anchor in the absolute center of his emotional darkness, just trying to pull him back to the surface again. And that brings us to the thesis of the entire song, really. Maybe love is all that's left when faith no longer understands. When the theology totally fails, when the hallelujahs just become distant echoes, that simple, profound, everyday act of a wife reaching for her husband's hand, that is the single glimmer of redemption to be found in this otherwise hopeless place.
So I'll leave you with this final, provocative thought. As the narrative closes, the children are sleeping, the night air is warm, the distant church bells are ringing again. Are those drying bloodstains by the door an actual end to his silent war? Or are they just a quiet pause before the vicious cycle begins all over again tomorrow morning? It's a pretty haunting reality to ponder. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and remember to always keep seeking to understand the hidden stories behind the words.